Hello, I'm Mr. Pibbles, but you can call me Peter, and welcome back to our Challenge Park series here in Planet Coaster 2. Yes, we are kind of here for another episode, and if you remember last episode and the last couple of episodes, we have worked on this, which is our lovely Barnstormer roller coaster. And I know that kind of in the little intermediary episode, we had a little bit of a ride on that, and we went through all of this, all of that. So today we are going to be working on a little bit of a plaza, just opposite it, to kind of help some of the things that our guests need, because they're hungry, they're thirsty, they need the toilet, all of this, all of that. So what we're going to do is we are going to build a little plaza here to kind of help with that, and then possibly we'll also come over here and have a play around with this and see what we can do to it. So, without further ado, let's roll that time lapse. Yes, let's roll that time lapse. Hello, welcome to the time lapse. And yeah, I'm in shock that we're at episode 6 already. You know, time has flown by, and I know I've been getting these episodes out, daily, and kind of going, episode. But it's just been fun, if I'm being completely honest. Kind of, it's been fun to just get in and sort of flex those Planet Coaster muscles that, we all need to flex from time to time. And it's been fun. So, as I mentioned in the, introduction to this time-lapse, today we are working on this little plaza just outside the front of the Barnstormer. And again, this has mostly come about because a lot of the guests are complaining, where's the food, where's the drink, where's all this, where's all that? And I thought actually it might be best to stick in another set of things. So in terms of the kind of style I've gone for with these, it's similar to what we've done previously with kind of all the other buildings. But I've actually tried to go a little bit more interesting with the roof on this one, in terms of kind of having the building be on layers and all of that. And I think it's ultimately turned out okay. Yeah, you'll see me here coming in and trying to kind of fix this roof with these little 1 meter segments, and it's nice. I like it. As with the previous episode, that being episode 5, not 5.5, this, I won't say it's a filler episode because we get a lot more done kind of for the park in this episode than we did in episode 5, but it is a lot more of a relaxed episode, and I know, this is a Planet Coaster series, I need to be building rides and stuff, but just you wait, I've got something special planned for some of the episodes that are coming up, and I've got ideas which, I'm not going to divulge right now, but let's just say there are things that will be in the works. I've started having a think, and I know what I'm wanting to do. And yeah, it's going to be fun. I will admit this is an exciting and fun series for me to do. As you'll know if you watched my initial, episode 0 of this whole thing, this is something I've always wanted to do. And now that I'm doing it and finding that it's easier than I first thought it would be, this time is just flying by, and I'm making these episodes, and soon we will have a park, which is again exciting stuff. But yes, so you can see me here getting all of these brick pillars in. I really like the brick pillars, as I've probably mentioned before, along with these long, thick wooden beams. I just like the way that they look, kind of in the whole style of this building, and I think what it ultimately ends up looking like is really cool. It's not a one-to-one or anything like that. But I think the biggest thing I'd say subconsciously that was in my mind while building this was the Loki's Alpine Bar, I believe it's called, at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, which has, you know, this sort of like very wood-heavy style. And as I say, it's not a one-to-one with the style, but it's that sort of... I think it works kind of with this idea that, you know, it feels somewhat similar. Which is fun. I'm putting all of these bits in now around these shops. As much as I like all the facades that are in the game already, apologies for the squeaky chair, I think just there's something about making your own facade that just hits different. You know, there are some really nice facades for shops in the game, and it's the same with the awnings, but ultimately, you know, you end up with something like this, and it fits for a project a lot better than something, you know, otherwise would be. But yeah, it's just the idea of kind of copying these beams round, copying the trim, and kind of all of this. You will notice that I have strayed away from the blue that is kind of round at the front of the park. That is mostly because of the colour scheme I went for the Barnstormer building, which I know is kind of just opposite this, and it is very red. So I thought kind of doing it in the same style with the red trim would just make it pop a little bit more. And you can see me here playing around trying to get the trim on the top of the on the top and front, kind of adding in depth, because ultimately I think that's one of the best things about kind of the building in this game, is that as soon as you add depth, it adds character and things start looking a lot better than they did. So you can see me here playing around with the pulleys and stuff, and I know exactly the piece that I'm looking for. I'm just going through everything to get to it because it's right at the bottom, but it's these warehouse pulleys, and they just... I just put one up there because I thought that's going to be perfect for this build, and you know what? It looks alright. It ultimately, I'd say, stylistically, this feels very almost American farmhouse. Sort of, you know, the rustic kind of wood and brick building. Very much barn as well. But again, with that element of almost kind of Alpine Lodge, which is a jumble of styles, but I'm glad that, you know, ultimately it works. So I'm just getting some windows in now. I do like the variety of these wooden windows. I do think they're the most useful for just generic builds. And as much as I like the other windows, for something like this specifically, kind of those just go a lot better. And it's the same with this wooden deck piece, which is the stairs. And if you will remember, you know, cast your mind all the way back to the last episode where I did use them as trim, here I'm using them as stairs, which, you know, one might say is quite refreshing. And just getting more of the little details in here with these flag pieces. Ultimately, you know, I wasn't going to have them because I was like, I don't know how they're going to look. And then I put them in and that looks like too much. And then I just took it down to this, and this looks a lot better than what it was. Kind of, I think you need to strike a balance of, you know, using different colours and using different pieces, but not using too many. And I think this is the right balance because it just adds a little bit. And it's the same with these chimneys. You know, I'm only adding a singular chimney here from the sorcery pack, but I do think that it just adds character to the building. And yeah, I'm just adding a little kind of another little beam onto the front of here, because you know, the other side we've got the windows, we've got the pulley, all of this, all of that, we've got the barn door, which is sound, but this side I didn't quite know, you know, what looked good and what didn't, because there was nothing there. Hence why I added the extra beam, and I think it's turned out for the best. And you can see me now putting some benches in, because I wanted this to also act as a bit of a, you know, picnic area, or like just a bit of a chill area. And putting these picnic benches in was perfect. You'll notice I did copy them over from the cafe we built all the way back in episode 2. But here we go, just adding the parasols. I think that just adds so much, but that is basically perfect. And I believe this is where I leave kind of this little building, after putting a couple of benches around. And yeah, kind of making sure that people are using it, which they are, which is good. And now we come back to the front of the park, where I finally work on this famed and at long length teased opening plaza building, which I will say outright, I do like how it turned out at the end. Like I'm telling you that now for free. It has a very rustic charm to it, but it is a very different style to the other building that we built today. It's weird. It's like it's the same pieces, but it's a slightly different style, and I think it works out for the best. Because as you can see, I'm here putting in the framework for the roof, and I go for this sort of shape, which was a bit of a gamble on my part because I didn't know how it was going to look. But I think it's ended up looking a little bit like an A-frame cabin, which, you know, you look at it here now, and I promise you that it gets better. I know it's a little ugly, but just wait until I get all of the pieces in and it'll look good. That's one of the things that annoys me, though. You will see me there, and I'm about to go on a very massive tangent, but the pieces for the tops of the roof, they don't snap where I need them to snap, which is in between these pieces to kind of add that top to the roof, which is a minor gripe, but it's ultimately annoying enough for me to go, yeah, no, that's annoying. So I'd love it if you could snap those pieces kind of to the middle of two roof pieces, but there we go. And this is what I was talking about earlier in terms of making it look good. Just getting these sorts of pieces in to kind of add that frame on. And again, ultimately, I think it looks okay. At the moment, it looks alright. I do promise you, and I will promise you, that it gets better from here. But yeah, it just looks nice, and this sort of architectural style that I've, you know, coincidentally decided on for this park was a little bit of a gamble on my part, because I'd never really used this specific style in a park before. But again, I think it has ultimately worked out for the best, just because, you know, you look at it, and again, it has that charm that I'm looking for, that sort of, you know, a park that you remember from childhood. You know, you'd go there on the weekends. It would be really nice, and it's just something small and local, which is possibly going to change the further we get into this series, but that's something that I'm thinking about further down the line. But for now, we are sticking with it being this smaller, kind of family fun park, as you'll remember from the sign. But yeah, I am slowly in the background coming up with ideas and things to do further into this park. I've got ideas for sort of, aside from all of these bits and pieces, I'm also planning on adding things like gardens in. and things along that lines. And I've got something kind of fun in mind that kind of ties into the idea of this being something small, something British, which I will get into a lot further down the line, because, you know, I've got to adequately plan this out if I'm going down this route. But I will say that it does involve everyone's favourite Holy Roman Empire and everything from there. So that is all I'll say for now. But I have ideas. And yeah, it should ultimately be quite fun when we get to it. But for now, I'm adding this balcony on to the end of the building, and my problem is I put in the balcony and it looked way too big when I initially put it in, hence why I scaled down the railing pieces, and I think at the end of the day this looks a lot cleaner, a lot nicer than it would have done the other way round. And again, it just adds a little bit of character onto the end of this building that you wouldn't necessarily have otherwise, which is good in this game because, you know, it's very easy to stick a box around something and call it a day, but actually making something look nice and look lived in and lived around kind of makes everything a lot better. Now, as you can see, kind of even by putting in those little bits of stone down the bottom, that trim along the bottom, which is from the Viking pack, if I remember correctly, just adding those little bits adds so much to this building to make it look a lot better, in terms of the way that it, you know, sits within kind of the ground and looks against everything. It's no longer just a flat wooden box. It's now, you know, got all the colour, got all the trim, and again, I am very proud of how this turned out, and I'm excited for an episode down the line where I get into the other half of this plaza, which is going to be a souvenir shop, which, like, I'll tell you that now, it's going to be a souvenir shop, and it will be a fun one, kind of, now that we've got souvenir shops in the game that came out with, I can't remember which update, but it was one of the recent ones, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be a bit of a walk-through thing, but it is going to be in a similar style to this, and it will be one of the first things you see when you arrive into the park, which sort of will cement itself with this architectural style, which will be fun. And you can see me here adding a little bit of a, you know, an extra bit onto the roof just to give it a little bit more flavour, and I think that was ultimately the best option and thing that I could have done, because at the end of the day, you know, you can go through, you can add the A-frame roof and make it look really nice, but this just adds a little bit of variety to that frame and kind of gives it a reason for existing, and ultimately, like, it just looks really good and kind of breaks up the monotony of the roof, if that makes any sense whatsoever. I know I am chatting a lot, but there we go. So I'm now starting to add some windows onto the edge, which I think is the final thing that kind of really makes this all pop, which really goes to show the length that just a little bit of detail on the outside of a building can go. Because, you know, from where it was to where it is now, you know, it's these windows that have been the major factor. Watch me in real time go, nope, that's not a good idea, why did I do that? Which is always fun, but yes, just adding that little bit there with those windows and everything, and kind of putting one of these things up here. Now, I don't go for any of these plaques or crests, even though I was going to at the start. I end up going for one of these gargoyles that came out in the sorcery pack, which I know they're stone, and I know, you know, they wouldn't necessarily fit on a building like this, but I think it does add just a little bit to the top, which it sorely needed, and ultimately, like, I am, again, proud of how this all turned out. So now I'm just sorting out this little patch of green that's next to it, because I couldn't just leave that there as it was. But, you know, you wouldn't fill that with path, because that's on a way to a staff area. So what would you do instead? Well, I'm here sticking in some railings and putting in this little fence here. I say little fence, it's not little at the moment. You will see me in a bit go, actually how tall is this? And then completely decide to overhaul this entire area because I don't like how big the fences are. But yeah, it is ultimately what this front area needed, which is a little bit of green. And I know we've got the green of the grass, the green of the trees behind, but this is kind of more green in the forefront, which again is, I believe, just perfect and what this little area needed. And you'll see me in a bit kind of go have a couple of looks through the front of the park at what I built here. And again, this adds so much texture to the guest service building that's behind it, and it just adds a little bit more to this overall really nice area. And you can see me now playing around with the sizing of this fence, just trying to get something that works. And yeah, it's nice. I do like the scaling tool in this game. I think it was one of the best additions that they could have added over the first game. And, you know, I think it's really cool. And that's another thing, these hedge pieces, which kind of are, I believe they're an addition from this game. I think they are really nice pieces. Like, I'd love to make something along the lines of a hedge maze, even though it wouldn't be very usable, but I'd love to make something like that, or, you know, something similar that would just look really nice in a park like this, which I may look at doing further down the road, but for what I'm just doing now, which is, you know, adding something into the middle of this green area, and you can even see from there how much it added just having it there. And I wasn't going to do this initially because I liked having the smaller the smaller hedges so you could see over, but then I went, I could run some stuff up the hedge. And then I decide not to run some stuff up the hedge, instead decided to put it on the building itself. And I think this was just nice. This was a lovely addition on my part. And you can see me kind of go back and forth and add these wisterias, which, again, I really like these pieces. And even if it obscures the windows, you know, you can still see them. And it kind of adds that colour that the front of this park was needing. I say colour as if, you know, everything isn't blue, but there we go. But yes, I'm just adding in now these pieces of, I can't remember what flower they are, but they're a flower. And yeah, I believe we are just about to head out from this time lapse and head back into real time, so I will see you in the real world in a sec. Well, there we go. Welcome back to Real Time as we go over what we've done this episode. Of course, we started off with this nice little plaza over here opposite the Barnstormer. I really like the way that this looks. Kind of approaching it from here. It's got that feel that just fits with the style of the ride itself, and I just think it looks and feels really nice. So I'm happy with how that turned out. And then also, we've finally got this building up the front of the park sorted. This being the equivalent of that little plaza up at the front, you know, with your drinks, your food, and everything in between. So, I think it looks okay, and most importantly, as you're walking into the park, you know, it's the first thing you'll see. Let's say we've pre-booked tickets, you walk through, and you look over, and wow, it looks nice, kind of with the planters. And I think once we've got something on the opposite side that will mirror it, I think this will all just pop. Now, if you have enjoyed this episode, then please feel free to give me a comment, give me a like, possibly even a subscribe if I'm lucky, and I will see you in the next episode. Roll that outro.